Live. All right. Hey everybody, welcome. We're going live today to show you some of the cool stuff you've been seeing on the FN Ink specialties. Today we're going to do some quick demos on the FN Ink Gold and why you may want to combine it with some Curable Reducer in order to go through higher mesh counts so you can get even more detail out of your prints. After we talk about the gold and any questions that you guys have about the gold, we're going to continue on with silver and show you some of the cool and maybe surprising ways you can actually use that in existing prints, new prints, and ways you can combine it with other inks. After that, we're going to switch things up and take a look at the backlog of prints that I've been printing, playing with since we started testing all the specialty effects. We'll show you some key things so that you need to know and answer some of your questions. So let's get started. The first thing we want to talk today about is just how easy it is to actually print the FN metallic gold. We talk about general mesh counts that you want to use, anywhere between a 110 and a 156 mesh. The majority of what you'll be doing is through a 110, but you will be able to print through a 156. If you've got fine detail you need to take care of, that's where the little bit of Curable Reducer is going to come in. But let's do a print and take a look at what it looks like. One of the first things we want to recommend whenever you're doing, well, printing any color, but especially with the metallics, is we're going to want to do a flood stroke. And we're going to want to fill our stencil with ink. This is going to make it easier for all of your inks, but especially those that have a flake, to pass through and get a good deposit on your shirt. So I'm going to do a flood. I can look under here and I can see that the stencil is actually filled with ink. So when I come back with my squeegee, all that ink that's here is going to easily deposit on the shirt. So let's see what one stroke looks like. Now this was a clean screen. There was no ink in it before this print, so let's see what it looks like. Not perfect, but it's better than if I did that without a flood stroke. Let's go ahead and do this again and print one more stroke. Getting better. This was gold straight out of the container. If I wanted it to cover a little bit faster, flow through the mesh a little bit faster, again, everything on here is cold, I'd add just a little bit of Curable Reducer. Do one more. Looking pretty good. I'm going to give this a quick flash. Question we have is, what is the highest and lowest mesh count you can go through with gold? Good question. The highest mesh count that I would want to go through is a 157 standard mesh, and that is because we're talking about the flake size in relation to the hole opening size in your mesh. As we go through higher mesh counts, cold platins do not flash fast. As we go through higher mesh counts, that opening mesh, the opening in your mesh gets smaller and smaller, but our flake size stays the same. So we need to find a mesh count that has an opening that is big enough for that flake to go through. I personally am a big fan of thin thread mesh. So you'll find a 157 thin thread, the ink flows through very well. It's equivalent to the opening size of about a 123 mesh. As far as the lowest mesh counts that you can go through as low a mesh count as you want, but at a certain point you're putting through so much ink, it's a waterfall of color. It's not exactly what you want to do. So I tend to recommend nothing lower than an 83 or 86 mesh. So let's see how this looks after one more pass. Now that is a pretty bright, clean metallic gold. All right. How can you print halftones with gold? Or is the question, can you print halftones with gold? Yes, you can print halftones with gold, no problem. We have a design over here off press that we can speak to. I'm going to flash this design. But first, let me talk to you about, really quickly, if you can keep the detail on your screen and you are using a mesh count in which that gold can flow through the screen, you can print halftones. You can print fine details. What you want to look at is the detail, and does it actually, when you're looking at the mesh and you pull out a loop, pull out a 10x loop, take a look at those fine details. If it's all threads of the mesh, then those threads are going to not allow ink to pass through. And that's your primary concern. This looks like it's done flashing. Excellent. Now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to speak to moon design that we showed you in our gold video. And we're going to talk to the design and the detail that's in there. So we were talking about halftones. Within this design, this was printed through a 110 mesh, but you can see that we still have really good reversed out detail here and reversed out detail here. So keeping and holding detail is not technically difficult. The only technical part of all of this will be keeping the detail on your screen during your screen making process, which of course goes back to properly setting up your darkroom, screens are dry enough, proper EOM, and all the rest of that. But this is a 30-line halftone printed on a 110 mesh, and we're keeping very fine dot detail. Again, fine line detail on a 110 mesh. And this design looks like it was printed through a higher mesh count, but it was printed through a 110 mesh. In fact, I have this screen on press, and if our viewers would like to see what it looks like as I'm printing it, we can get that going and print that. All right. Okay, since we talked about Curable Reducer, we have a question: what is the purpose of Curable Reducer? So, you know, my playful response is always, hey, it's a reducer that's curable. And it's more of a, you know, if you're a history buff of screen printing, you might understand that response. But Curable Reducer, the focus of it is to quickly reduce the viscosity or the thickness of your ink. Because Curable Reducer is a liquid product, it's going to do that very quickly. The reason why there is a curable version is because sometimes we make mistakes. And if we add too much, we don't want the ink to be uncurable. So if we over add, we can still take that ink on press and print it. But again, the point is to reduce the viscosity of your ink as quickly as possible with as little addition of another ink as possible. That way we keep opacity, we keep the ink's performance characteristics. If it's a low bleed ink, a poly ink, we still want to keep those characteristics. Okay, how does Curable Reducer affect the opacity of the print? Again, if we're using it specifically to lower viscosity, we don't want to use much. We want to use as little as possible. That means that 1 to 3% in order to change the viscosity. Now, if we're talking about a very thick product, and typically those are whites, we would actually like to see that ink get up to what we call production temperature, which means the ink needs to be around 80 degrees. It can be a little difficult. I totally understand that. But the reason why we ask for that is once you add the Curable Reducer to the ink when it's warm, that's when you get your final print characteristics, how that ink will perform when it's on press. So we modify it then, it performs correctly, and then we print without any issues. If we added it to the ink when it's cold, we will end up adding too much to the ink because it's now at this temperature easy to print, but when we get it on press and we start printing with it, it will quickly get to 80 or 90 degrees and the ink starts to flow even more, which means that it could be too runny, it could not mat fibers well, or it could have some other performance characteristic issues that we don't like. So a general rule of thumb is up to 3%, recommended maximum of 5, but you can use, of course, as much as you want, as it is curable on its own. All right. Add color to gold. Okay, we can talk about adding color to gold. This is a fun topic. I'm going to set this off just a little bit. Thank you. Let's see. Adding color to gold. The bottom line of adding color to gold is you can do whatever you want. You can add 10% color to gold, you could add 90% color to gold. There's no limit to what you can do, but you have to walk into it with this understanding. The opacity of the color you're using, meaning how that ink is designed to perform, is going to have an impact on how much of that gold flake or silver flake or what, any flake product, how that ink is going to perform, how well you're going to see it. So if you take a color like, actually let's talk to this bull's design over here. So when we look here at this design, every single ink has gold flake in it. So this is 100% gold, this is black, orange, and red. And then of course there's a white underlay. We have in the black 80% black and 20% gold. Now you may think that black is going to cover up the flake quickly and dramatically. Well, at least in the case of FN, it doesn't. You can actually see quite a bit of the flake coming through. Here with this bronze shade, this is 20% orange being added to gold. It tints it, it gives it a color shift. But this red, in order to get the red shade that I wanted in this design, I had to end up going to 80% red and 20% gold. Now in the sun you do see some of the flake, but it's not very noticeable. It's covered up quite a bit, and this goes back to how that color was engineered. Now, past that, some of the things you want to think about are you always want to keep this in mind. The color of the flake is going to influence your final mixed result. If you're adding red to gold, you recognize that you're adding red to an already reddish color. Gold is made up of yellow, red, little bits of black and white, depending on the shade of the gold. So that's always going to tint the color that you put it into. I originally thought adding this red and this yellow to a green would end up making it really muddy really quick. Once I added it, it actually looked really good. It did not discolor the green too much. But the moment I added 20% red to gold, it immediately went to brown because of that black part in the gold flake. So it darkened it up and made it more of a brick. So I had to add more and more and more red in order to actually get this gold color to come off. Can you create a bronze color using gold? Yes, yes, specifically on that shirt, that bronzy shade, that was using gold, that was using orange into the gold. You could also use magenta into gold to tint that, because it wasn't going to take a whole lot. You're looking at anything from the yellow, orange, gold shade or the red shades to give it a little bit of a tint. But again, you got to play based on the color combinations you're going to get. Can you mix pearl and gold? Okay, the technical answer is yes. I have not actually done that. Now I want to. I want to, and now I'm thinking about it in my head. Do I have? All right, we're going to come back to that one later. Remind me. I'm going to just mix up a little bit on my fingers. I want to see what it's going to look like. I wonder. Yeah. Anyways, my brain's spinning out of one. That one's a fun question. Okay. Let's see. Next one. What colors look good when mixed with gold? What colors would you not mix with gold? Okay, that one goes right back to what I was talking about before. Remember, gold has very specific color combinations. It's that red, the yellow, and the black and the white combination. So depending on the color you add it to, it'll either, harmoniously blend, or it'll look like doggy poo. Like I said, adding a little bit of red into it just turned it to a brown shade. It did not look good at all. I needed to over-add red to overcome the color combinations that the gold was giving me. If I add it to royal blue, I know that that red part of it plays nice with royal blue, but that yellow part wants to create a green along with that darkening. So I am going to get a bit of a muddy color out of that one. Okay, All right. Are there any other questions about gold before we move on to talking about silver? All right. Excellent. Okay. We're going to move on to printing silver. One thing to note is that there is a flake difference between the gold and the silver. The silver is an aluminum flake, which means it's a very fine, very bright particle, but it is a metal. So it is something to think about if you're looking at long-term laundry. If you find that you need to keep a chrome effect, you might want to look at doing an overprint. You could see some dulling in the wash over time. All right, now one of the things that I really like about this ink, it flows like butter. It is just, I mean, you look at it funny and it flows through the screen. It's so easy to print and it is bright. So we're going to do a single flood, again, pre-fill the stencil, and we're going to do one print. So that is a single pass flood print with the silver. Again, flows through the screen like absolute butter. Now, when you talk about flashing, you saw earlier that I was flashing the gold on a cold palette, cold ink. Took a little bit to flash. It wasn't production ready, sorry. When you're talking about metallics, they are designed to reflect heat. That means it's going to reflect the heat from your flash, and they will naturally take longer to heat up. Same thing happens with your dryer. Running it through your dryer, it's going to reflect the heat coming out of your electric panels. So you need to set your dwell time, potentially raise your temperature to adjust for this effect. So I'm going to send this over under the flash. It's a cold platen, cold ink. This is not going to flash fast. Even though these are low temp inks and the ink inside of it will get up to temperature and gel at those lower points, it takes a little bit longer. Good question. Used silver in the past. How come it looks dull after I wash it? That was one of the things I touched on just a little bit ago. That is the reaction with some detergents because this is an aluminum flake. It's that aluminum flake that allows this to look as bright as it does, to give that chrome, hard chrome effect. It can tarnish in the wash. Some prints will tarnish quickly because of different factors. Others will take a long time. So it is something for you to test and play with. There's also a way that you can use a clear to overprint. The easiest thing to do is to test, and you'll find that all metallics that use an aluminum flake will tarnish. All right, that is very, very dry. Let's give this one more flood print. Now the print surface is not butter smooth, but that is a chrome effect. The smoother your print surface, the flatter and more mirror-like that effect will be. Can silver be used as an underbase? Yes, 100% silver can be used as an underbase. I actually have a screen set up that was used as an underbase for a test that I was doing. I wanted to see whether or not the silver as an underbase for a photograph, for the picture of a woman's face, if I printed the color on top of it, how much of that silver would come through. It's something that's easy to do with water-based inks. It has always been difficult to do with plastisol. That just goes back to its inherent nature of light transmittal and a bunch of other fun technical stuff. Turned out it looked okay. It did not have the effect that I wanted, but I will probably try it again later with water-based inks. Give this a quick flash, and then I am going to, here we go, I'm going to put this silver ink into that image we were just talking about. Okay. So again, this is a cold platen. The screen has not had any ink in it. It's been cleaned. This is a 230 mesh. And one of the things that I really like about this silver is that because that flake size is small enough, it goes through a 230 mesh like butter. It goes through so easy. So I'm going to give this a hard flood because this is going to give a pretty neat effect. I love that image. I really hope it's showing up well on screen. I just love how that looks, that flooded image. All right, so I'm going to give this one squeegee pull. So on a fresh image, fresh screen, single pull, this is what it looks like. It doesn't look very bright because, again, this was a brand new screen, single pull. We are still getting that flake to come through these 2 and 3% dot areas. We just don't have a large volume of ink down. And this is what that looks like just with that single pull first time. So I'm going to do another flood into print. So that's closer to what you'll get on a normal production run of printing silver, is it looks really good, even through these high mesh counts. This wonderful reverse detail stays nice and clean because as long as you can keep the detail on your screen, you can print it. Again, this is that smaller 2 and 3% dot. Overall tonal values look fantastic. So again, this is a cold platen, but I'm going to flash it. Because it's a thinner ink deposit, it's going to flash relatively quick. Okay, high detail, and we're going to talk about adding color to this here very shortly. All right, flash that just a little bit longer. So I'm going to show you what this looks like as a print flash print, and then we're going to transition over, and I'm going to talk about, again, a deeper dive that I did with design where I was doing color, but I underbased it with white. So it's going to give us that brighter, cleaner chrome effect. Again, we want to do a flood. Print stroke. So that's that print flash print through a 230. Looks pretty bright. All right, let's go talk about this one. So in here, you saw everything that you saw over there while I was printing is still here in this design. It's the same screen. But this one has been underbased with white. All those fine details are still here. The reversed out detail is in all that tonal value within the images here. But we got a flatter chrome look in these more solid areas. Again, you know, it's hard to keep singing the praises of this because the proof is right here. If you can keep it on screen, you can print it. Okay, let's flash this off. Good question. Is the FN metallic silver similar to the Whifflex liquid silver? It's in that same vein of that extremely fine particle that can go through higher mesh counts. There are minor differences between the two products. It's not the same, clearly. What you're looking at is an easier ink to print with the FN ink, but FN ink is a very easy to print system. And the color tone, that gray value, is a little different between the two. Otherwise, yes, they are very similar products. All right. So, question is adding color to silver, just like we were talking about adding color to the gold. Yes, 100% you can do that. You can add color to your silver, you can add color to the gold, you can add color to any flake product, pardon me. The only thing that you want to worry about as a screen printer when you're adding color is, again, how much it's going to overwhelm the color of the flake. And does the color of the flake impact your color choice? So with silver, we're looking at specifically gray values, black and white. So that gray, when you add it to another color, is definitely going to impact what it looks like. So if you are adding silver to royal blue or royal blue to silver, you will end up with a more gunmetal look. That royal blue will lighten out a little bit because of that white value in the silver flake. And then because of that black, it's going to cause it to look a little gray because it's a gray color. And that creates that more gunmetal effect. Another good example is if you're adding it to yellow. Yellow and black, when they're combined, black at small amounts into yellow will turn to a green shade. So if you're adding yellow to silver, you're not going to end up with a yellow ink. It's going to end up looking on the green side, a little muddy, definitely not a yellow that you may be looking for. Can you tint silver to match a PMS color? The odds are no, unless you have a very gray PMS color that you're looking for. Because again, you need to account for that color values in the silver flake, that gray and that white effect. If you're trying to match a very clean, very pure color, the answer is going to be no, unfortunately. There's just no way to do that because again, that white and the black that's in there, it's at gray value. So if I was to add it to red, I'm going to dull out that red pretty quickly. But if I add it to that royal blue or another blue shade, gunmetal looks pretty neat. So adding it to greens, purples, some of those colors look really good. Other colors not so much, just because of that color combination. Cure temp of FN metallics. So again, FN ink line is low cure, 260 degrees, all the way through from top to bottom, very bottom of that ink layer. Once you reach full fusion all the way through the ink layer, you're cured. When we're talking about metallics, we're talking about reflected light. It takes longer for that ink deposit to reach cure temperature. Now, if you're in a gas dryer, that doesn't have any effect because you've got forced air that's moving around. But when you're in an infrared dryer, you need to worry about the infrared light that's coming out and creating heat within the chamber. That flake is reflecting that light, so it's going to take longer to heat up. Yes. Okay, good question from earlier before we started our live stream. Will adding color concentrates change the cure? Okay, for those of you who don't know, color concentrates are a different, it's a different type of mixing system. So instead of a pigment concentrate, which will not ever cure on its own, there's no resin in there. Color concentrate is a extremely condensed form of ink. Depending on who made it, it either will barely kind of sort of cure or won't. It's like on that edge of not curing. And it's meant to be put into another base. That's how that ink system was devised. So with the color concentrate systems on the market, those still have a specific cure temperature because there are the resins in those color concentrates. So whatever temperature those are designed, chemically created to cure at, is its cure temperature. So if you add that into a low cure ink, you are technically raising that cure temperature, depending on whatever that ratio is. So if you have a standard cure ink, we're going to segue from color concentrates to regular cure inks because they fall in the same definition. So if you have a standard cure ink and a low cure ink, and you combine them 50-50, that cure temperature will slide to meet in the middle. So 320, 260, meet in the middle. You're talking about 60, add 30, so 290. 290 is going to be your new cure temperature. And whatever that ratio is, it's going to slide one way or another to follow the heavier percentage that you've added. Okay, so to summarize that, yes, you can absolutely add color concentrates to it. Depending on the cure temperature of your color concentrates, it will change the cure temperature of the fusion ink. Sorry, FN ink. It's fusion point of the FN ink. Dye migration. Is there any worry about dye migration with metallic inks on anything poly? Short answer is yes. There is always concern about dye migration whenever you're printing something that is not a low bleed product. The great majority, In fact, right now I'm struggling to remember any that are low bleed. All the metallics on the market, all the metallics, glitters, sparkles, all of those are standard clears. They're not low bleed clears that the flake is put into. So all of those will have the same issue of, if the garment is going to bleed, that dye from the fabric is going to sublimate into, migrate into the clear, tinting that ink. So yes, you will need to worry or be concerned about the dye migration on any poly or poly blended garment. Unless, of course, it doesn't bleed, then you don't have to worry about it. Can you cure the metallics with the flash unit? Yes, absolutely. You can cure any ink with your flash unit. It's just a matter of leaving the garment on, under the flash unit long enough. And again, all those things apply that we talked about earlier with the metallic colors reflecting light. So they take longer to cure. But yeah, totally doable. Absolutely. Curing difference between silver and gold. Okay, good question. It's a nuanced question. The short answer is no, there's no cure difference because again, FN, the base, the plastisol base in those inks, all cure at the same temperature. But the gold reflective value and the silver reflective value are different. Silver will reflect more heat than the gold does, just because of its reflectivity values, or whatever the technical term is. I don't know the technical term right now. That's what you want to worry about. So the silver will take longer because it's reflecting more heat. Okay. Question to transition away from metallics for a little bit. What's the difference between curable reducer and soft hand additive? Okay, curable reducer is meant to reduce the viscosity of your ink. That is its first and foremost job and its first and foremost use. Soft hand additive is meant to be a product that you add specifically to change how the ink feels on the shirt. Can curable reducer be used for that purpose? Yes, but that's not its intent. That's not how it's chemically made to be. In certain circumstances, it can mimic a soft hand additive. And it also depends on which soft hand additive we're talking about. There's a number of different types on the market. All right. Let's talk about, again, adding color to the FN silver. We haven't shown you anything yet. So just like with the gold, I'm going to segue over here, adding color, you can do anything you want. In this design specifically, this is 80% black and 20% silver. So on a black shirt, you don't see that black ink. What you're seeing is a greatly reduced silver that's printing on the shirt. So again, this is 20% silver into black, but it looks like you did a reflective print because you have, it's dispersed enough that the little bits of aluminum are reflecting heat more individually, or reflecting light more individually. Anyways, I'm geeking out on it a little bit. And it looks really freaking neat. And I like doing stuff like this, where it's much more subtle, the effect is much more nuanced. Yeah, overall, it's one of those things that's near and dear to my heart, of having fun with the ink that we're doing. Anyways, I really enjoyed being creative with this one. Now, we did another design that you saw in our silver video. It had a lot of Baroque elements, flourishes. It was a 6-screen design in which I did multiple levels of silver addition into black, color, into clear, into our extender base, to create different layers and levels of effects. So I had a lot of fun. I played with several different colors on this one. I tried this out a few different ways. Again, I got to geek out. I had fun. So as we go over here and look at this, we did, let's see. So here in this background, this is the same ink. This is the gold and the silver mix, 80%, sorry, black and silver, apologies. 80% black, 20% silver as the background color. You can see the border over here. So I printed there's that, there is a gray, here's a good point. This is 20% silver into 80% extender base to create this tonal value between the bright silver, the blackened silver, and then silver by itself. So that is, I'm actually using that as my underbase under this green and under this purple and then under the silver at 100% value. So again, I got to geek out, play, have fun. Silver's in everything on this design. The purple and the green is falling direct to shirt to show the color contrast that you can get. Everything here has silver in it. This was a lot of fun to do, a lot of fun to work with and play. It's something that I want to revisit in the future and try and do a little bit more with. I'm not quite sure when I'm going to get to it. All right. Oh. Somebody wants to talk about pearl. All right. What's the difference between pearl and silver? Everything. Silver, of course, is that aluminum flake. It's very silver in color. But pearl literally looks like you took pearls and crushed them up. It has that same luster. It doesn't shimmer and sparkle like the metallics do. It has a luster, a pearl luster to it. It's the pastel yellows, magentas, light blues. It's in that general realm that catches your eye. It's a lot of fun to print. It's also extremely subtle and a little bit more technically challenging. If you were to take that ink and print it direct to fabric, if we took any of the designs or any of the screens that we printed today and took that ink and printed it direct to fabric, you're going to see some of that luster, but you're going to see a lot of shirt texture. And that shirt texture completely breaks up the visual effect. So if you happen to see the video that we did on pearl, which you can see on its product page, you will see that we've recommended creating a paper smooth surface. And ideally using a very light color, like a white base. So you print your white base, hit it with a smoothing screen, ideally. Tap down all those fibers that secretly want to poke through. Flash that, hit it again so that it's a very bright, very clean surface. And then print your pearl on top. That is going to give you your best pearl results. And trying to think, no, that's pretty much it. It's not difficult to do, but it may be a change from something that you've done in the past. Incorporating a smoothing screen. If you have any questions on how to use a smoothing screen, if you haven't done that yet, we should have a link in the description. There are a few videos on creating your own and using them on press. But let's take a look at this design that I first did. I had an idea when I was looking at the pearl ink that it almost looked like marble. You know, in certain lights, I was like, I wonder if I can do this. So I went online and found a Statue of David image. And I'm like, hey, that gives me the contrast that I'm looking for. Can I reproduce this? And I did. You can see that this is a very flat, very smooth print. It is, in this lighting, it is hard to see the pearl luster, you know, absolutely. This is an ink that really lives and dies out in direct sunlight, where you can get that very strong indirect and direct lighting that creates all this awesome contrast. But again, you can see how smooth this is. That's where we're talking about the white base, print, smooth, print again, make it very flat and smooth, print your pearl on top, and then in this case, I printed black over it to create my shadowing. And it does look like a marble statue. I had fun with this. It's another design that I would like to chase in the future. There are some absolute masterpieces out there that would be amazing to try and capture on film. The theme of the day is adding color to the gold, silver, and pearl. So that's what we're going to talk about next. The pearl itself is a little bit more, I want to say translucent, although it's not really. It just allows light to play with it a little bit more. But most of that is because it doesn't really have a color. It itself is a very light color. It doesn't have a strong gold or strong silver effect. So you can add any color to it you want. all the same rules of the ink's natural opacity and how much it's going to cover the flake apply. Just like you saw with the gold, it can cover up that flake enough so that you don't really see it, like with the red and the gold. So as we take a look at this one, again, if you've watched the video that we did, this one I believe is on the product page. This one again has pearl in every color, but we also needed to create that white underbase. So technically pearl's not in every color, but we did the white underbase same way we did before. Underbase smoothing screen, underbase, so that we have that very bright, very smooth, very flat white. But then for this wolf, you can see the blue shade difference. Well, this is not two different shades of blue, this is just two different percentage values of blue. This one here is 40% royal blue, 60% pearl, and then up here it is 20% royal blue and 80% pearl. Because the royal blue is such a translucent color, it gives me two very different color values. And we're not seeing much in the way of any color shift. Here on top, we are printing straight pearl to give that extra luster effect, and itself, you can see it has a little bit of a translucency to let that color, the background color, come through. This yellow doesn't look like it has a whole lot of pearl in it. Again, that goes back to how much it does cover the flake when you put it in. And the red, you can kind of see a luster to it, but again, in order to get to that red shade, I needed to add quite a bit. So it will naturally cover it up. But I love this design. This design is one of the favorites that I've done. Oh, mixing pearl and gold. Okay, hang on a second. All right. Oh, product shot. Always got to remember product shots. Thank you. I'm just going to mix it on my fingers. Actually, yes, thank you. And I need one more, just a little, oh, there it is, that right there. Thank you. Never mind the technical difficulties. Thank you for standing by. So I'm going to add eyeball, because we're just doing this for fun. Just a little bit of gold, or a little bit of pearl. Going to do this 50-50-ish, eyeball 50-50. Mad scientists at work. Only try this in a controlled environment. All right, so let's see what this looks like. Okay, difficult to catch on camera. All right. That's interesting. Oh. Let's get this. I like that. That's very interesting. That would be very interesting to print. Hopefully this is showing up well on screen, well on camera. That's very interesting. I want to print that at some point, see what that ends up looking like. But this shirt that I have underneath here, when we're talking about mixing gold and silver, or pearl and silver, pearl and gold, gosh darn it. This right here is pearl transitioning over gold for an overprint. So on this design, I took all the specialties that we've been talking about, including the puff, and incorporated them all in one design. I like this. Still stirring with it, stirring it up and playing with it. That's interesting. All right. So I did a design that I wanted to showcase all the different specialties that we're working with. So in this design, I only have white underlay in a couple of places. I have it under the gold here, always under the pearl, under the gold here, and then under these banners, and here in the FN. the rest of the gold that you see is printed direct to fabric. And here, the silver is printed directly over the gold. So you don't need to use a white base as an underlay all the time. You can be creative and use any part of your design in order to create whatever you want. So the print order on this one was white, and I did do a print flash print of the white because I needed to keep that pearl, have a nice background color for the pearl. And then I printed the gold, and then I flashed it. I printed my puff. I printed my brown, then I printed my puff, and then I printed my silver. Now the puff is right here as an outline, and the silver, it's maybe hard to see on camera, but the silver actually overlays the puff and then drops behind it to create that silver drop shadow. But again, everything is doable if you just put forth a little bit of time, a little bit of effort into the engineering of your design and your separations. Silver coming to a point over the gold. Play, have fun, be creative, let your imagination flow. Bring your art to life. All right, how many specialties can you add to one print? Yes, add as many as you want. Your creativity and your imagination is your only limit. And print head space. If you don't have the print heads, it's hard to print. All right. How do the metallics look when you're extending them, when you're adding clear to them, specifically with the extender base? So I really only had the one example, which was in that Baroque type design, in which I used it to create a gray value in an underlay. What it's going to do is it's going to disperse the flake. So if you wanted to add 10% gold or silver into extender base, to a 90% extender and 10% of the metallic, it's going to look very dispersed. It's going to look very thin. But that can create its own interesting values. Think about putting that in as like a halftone dot overlay on something, or like a background effect. It's not a strong metallic, it's a nice subtle look. It can lend value, creative value to your design. So at this point, I would love to see more questions that you guys have. Is there anything more that's coming through? Can you add puff to silver or gold? Okay, okay, so how I would approach that from a design perspective is I would encourage a puff underlay for that. Because if you're adding puff to the silver or gold, as it puffs, let me explain puff for a moment. Puff is a microsphere that when exposed to heat expands. And when you create these expansions, they're essentially light occlusions. So it stops light from traveling through where that puff is. So because the metallics and the metallics, the gold and the silver, rely so much on light traveling through that clear to get that sparkle reaction, you've stopped all of that the moment you added puff. But if you put the puff underneath it, print that metallic on top, then what it does is it just expands what's underneath it, and you still get your puff or your gold effect on top. It is diminished just a little bit because of how we're thinning and stretching the ink layer, but yes, that is how you want to do it. Totally doable. All right, so we're good? All right. Hey guys, thanks for showing up today. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you for your questions. I'm excited to see you guys as pumped about all these new inks as I am. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the chat box in the description below. Drop a comment. Let us know if you have any questions. There are a number of ways these specialties can be used. I'm reading off a teleprompter, can you tell? And we'd love to see what you're doing with them. Hey, I want to see what you guys are doing. Drop links to pictures, drop pictures in there. Tell us about what you've done in your experiments, and we'll see you guys next time.